Okay, guys, we're going to take a short break from our notes so we can discuss how to annotate in theology class. Anytime the sub or I tell you or ask you to annotate a reading, this is the expectation. So please make sure that you pay very close attention to this presentation or this video, because if you do not follow these instructions, your homework will not be considered complete. So again, make sure you pay attention. You don't have to take notes on this particular video if you don't want to. That's your business. However, just make sure that you follow the instructions so that way in the future you can get all of your homework points when I ask you to annotate a reading. Okay, at this point, you should all have received a document that outlines annotating for theology. We're going to have so many readings in theology this year. I mean, you may not be used to this many readings. I know that your freshman year, when I taught freshmen, we didn't have a lot of homework. And when we did, the readings were very short. Sophomore theology, I have no idea how much reading you had to do. I've never taught sophomore theology. But this year might be very difficult for some of you because there may be more reading than you're used to. And that's okay. So the whole idea of annotating, or the reason why I teach you how to annotate, is to help you get through these difficult readings. And this is a life skill. Okay, annotating a document is going to help you in college. It's going to help you in your career. Especially when you get to college, you're going to have a lot of reading, and you're going to have 5 classes, and all of those 5 classes are going to have a lot of reading involved, even if you are a science major. Okay, some people try to say that going into the sciences, chemistry, physics, that they don't have a lot of reading. That's not true. My husband has multiple science degrees and he had to do quite a bit of reading. So please don't, assume that, oh, I'm going to go be a research scientist, I don't have to read. That's not true. You're going to have a lot of reading for the rest of your academic career. And so when you annotate, what you're doing is that you are actively reading a text. Annotating is an effective reading strategy that guides you, the reader, through a difficult or dense text. When you annotate, what you're doing is actually taking notes. I'm going to say this again. You're actually taking notes on the document while you read. So you're using your hands and you're moving instead of just, looking at it with your eyes or just skimming it. So when you annotate a reading selection, you are actively reading and interacting with the text as opposed to just passively skimming the words. When you do this properly, you only need to read the text once to identify and comprehend overarching ideas, and you can quickly refer to your notes and annotations to refresh your memory concerning the contents of a text. I have a master's degree in philosophy. You cannot even begin to imagine how much reading that involved. My books are not out on the shelves right now. I have them packed up. But when I get back and I unpack my shelves, you will see exactly how many books I had to read for my master's. You do not have time in your, when you're undergraduate or your master's, you do not have time to go back and read things 4 and 5 times. You don't have time for that. Even now as a junior, guys, I know that you have sports and you have all of these extracurricular activities, and you have friends and you have things you need to do in addition to schoolwork. You don't have time to read your homework 5 times. You don't have time for that. And I don't expect you to read your homework 5 times. So why should you annotate? If you annotate properly, you will never have to go back and read a document ever again. All you have to do is go back and read your notes, and go back and read the things in the margins, and go back and read your underlined items. And you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. If you go to my bookshelf, which you're not allowed to do, you're not allowed to touch my bookshelf or my books or anything on it. But if you would open any of those books from my master's program, I have annotated the majority of those books. I never have to go back and reread a book. I can open it, look at my annotations, and tell you exactly what's important on that page. That's why you should annotate, because you will never ever have to read a document ever again if you do it properly. When you go to take a test, the night before your test, your theology test, you don't have to reread your homework. All you have to do is look at your notes, the notes that you've made on the document. Okay, so how do you annotate, or what does annotating look like? So when you come to give me your homework the next day, or the day that it's due, what am I looking for? I'm looking for highlighting, underlining, circling, arrows, And I'm looking for notes in the margin. I'm going to say that again. I'm looking for notes in the margin. If you do nothing other than highlight on a document, you will not get points. That is not annotating. If you do nothing other than underline a couple of words in the paragraph or on the document, you will not get points. That is not annotating. You absolutely, positively must have highlighting, underlining, circling, and notes in the margin. I'm going to say this again. Notes in the margin must be present. Okay, so start with a pencil. I'm not going to take off points if you don't use a pencil. I'm not going to be that particular, but it's just easier. Okay, if you make a mistake, it's easier to erase pencil and start over with that one particular line. If you're using a pen and you make a mistake, you might have to start over, or your document's going to be really messy and you may not understand what you wrote. So just, maybe start with a pencil. I would also use a highlighter, but I like to highlight. Some people don't, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to use a highlighter if you don't want to. I like to use sticky notes, and I put it straight on my document. You don't have to do that if you don't want to, but if you want more room, like if the margin's not wide enough for you to take notes, put a sticky note on it, or put it on another piece of paper and attach it to your document. But I absolutely positively want you to write notes in the margins. So let's start in order, and then I'll explain some more about the notes in the margins. But let's start in order from the beginning to the end of a document. The beginning of a document, you usually have the name of the author, the title of the selection, maybe you'll have when it was written, any one of those things. So pay attention to the author and the title of the selection. There are many times when I ask students, hey, who wrote Fides et Ratio? And they have no idea. And I get a little frustrated because they say, hey, the name of the author is on the document. Why didn't you see it? So the very first thing you should look at is, who wrote this? What is the name of the selection? When was it written? Why does it matter what year it was written? What was happening the year it was written? So think to yourself. Okay, let's take Fides et Ratio, which is your first homework assignment. It was written by St. John Paul II, and it's titled Fides et Ratio. Well, what does Fides et Ratio mean? If you don't know what that means, you should look it up. I promise you I'm going to ask you that in class. What does that mean? You should look at the date. It was written, I want to say, in 94. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but I want to say it was written in 1994. Actually, let me go check right now. Oh, I was wrong. See, it was 1998. So it was written in 1998. Just pay attention to that date, and we'll talk about the historical context of that date in class, but just pay attention to it. So look at the section and chapter titles, especially in Fides et Ratio. There are different chapter and section titles that I give you, and they're in Latin. If you don't know what that means, you should look it up. They're actually important. Otherwise, I wouldn't have given them to you. I would have just deleted them, okay? Because I'm not giving you the entire encyclical of Fides et Ratio. You just have some small portion of Fides et Ratio. So look at the chapter titles or section titles that I gave you and ask yourself, number one, look it up online, translate it. Number two, why would Miss Bollock give me this? What does this mean? Why does this matter? Okay, and so while you're going through each paragraph of the reading, go ahead and make notes in the margins. So what kind of things are you putting in the margins? You're putting things like important concepts, overarching ideas, maybe an outline, comments or questions that you might have. Maybe you don't understand something, so put a question in the margin, or put a question on a sticky note and stick it right there on the paragraph to help you remember, hey, I need to ask Miss Bollock about this, okay? So, or Miss Bollock-Ernie, sorry. So while you're reading, in each paragraph, go ahead and circle things. Circle things that you might think would be a vocabulary word or something that you need to look up. Underline things that you think are really important. If you think something's going to be on a test, maybe highlight that in a certain color, like red or pink. Like, oh, Miss Bollock is going to ask me about this. Let me underline or highlight this. This is important. I bet this is going to be on the test. or put a star. However you want to do it, you have to find your own personal way that you want to annotate. Use arrows to show connections. If you don't understand a word or something, put a big question mark or use a different color. If you look at my books or my annotations, I actually have all sorts of different colors. I have like pink, yellow, blue, and they all mean something different. But that's the way that I like to do it. You don't have to do that. If you have a question, maybe you can just put a question mark. It's up to you. But don't forget that you need to look this up. If you don't know what a word means, don't just keep going. Stop and look it up. And if you have to write it down, if you have to look up a word, write down the definition and put it on a little sticky note or something, or put it in the margin. So that way you'll never have to look it up ever again. You will always know what it means every time you look at your notes. Okay, if you cannot find the answer about a concept or a sentence or a word, that's when you need to ask me the next day when we're in class. And then after you read the document, don't just put it away and be like, peace out, I'm done. No. Okay, think about it for a second. What was the whole point of this? What was, the author trying to tell me? Why in the world would my teacher assign this? Why would Miss Bollock or Miss Bollock Ernie assign this for me in theology? Who cares? Um, is this relevant to my life? Is this relevant to my other classes? Yes. Okay. I'm not going to assign something that's useless. So, and same thing with your other teachers. They're not going to assign something that's useless. So think to yourself, um, what was new for me? Why does this reading matter? Who cares? What does this mean for my life? Who cares about this? And again, what didn't I understand? If you didn't understand something, make sure that you make a note to ask for help. Because just because you don't understand something doesn't mean that you can just let it go. This might appear on the test. And if you've never asked me for help, you're not going to know the answer on the test, or you're not going to understand the reading overall. So make sure that you keep track of things that you need to ask, because that's why we have class, for you to ask for help. Okay, so here are some examples of successful annotations. These are the types of things that I'm expecting to see when I look at your homework. And you might look at this and think, whoa, that's a lot of work. Whoa, that's way too much writing. No, it's not a lot of work and it's not too much writing. Remember, the goal with annotating is to read a document once and to never have to go back and read the entire document again. After you finish reading the document, if you've annotated properly, all you have to do is go back and look at your notes. As you can see, these are just two examples, and to be honest with you, all I did was Google annotation or annotations. That's all I did. I took these off of Google. I did not create these. These are not mine, okay? Um, so basically all that you see is you see some circles in the first one, in the first document or in the poem. You see some underlining, you see a star, you see some notes in the margins about things that were repeated in the reading. You see some comments about the repetition and the rhymes. You see comments about, the trees are symbols of the author. That's something that maybe that person thought while that person was reading this poem. Um, so as you can see, these are examples of, you can actually see what the person was thinking while they were reading this poem. And that's the idea, is that you think while you read. You don't just passively read, you actively interact with a document, that you can see your thought process, the thought process that you went through as you read the document. So look at, the evolution of useful things, which is the second picture. You see comments here about things that are important. Do you see her notes, important? You see other notes about, oh, this is interesting. And you see a couple of comments about what the paragraph was about. At the very bottom, you see a definition of a word that this person didn't understand. So these are different ways of annotating. If you gave me if I looked at your homework and it looked like the first picture, I'll give you full credit for that. That's a great annotation. If I look at your homework and your homework looks like the second picture, I will give you full credit for this as well. This is a great annotation as well. So it really just depends on your method and your style. You have to find what works for you, but you absolutely have to interact with the document, and you absolutely have to put notes in the margins for full credit. Here are examples of things that will not give you full credit for your homework. So as you can see on the left, the very first picture, All this person did was underline. Okay, so obviously this is a typing or this is a typed document. So maybe someone went through Microsoft Word and underlined it. Underlined, the first paragraph. That is not going to count as an annotation. Even if you underline by hand, okay, and you read the document by hand and you don't read the document digitally, and you underline something by hand, that is not going to give you full credit. To receive full credit, you must have notes in the margin. Underlining is not going to work. Same thing with the picture on the right. All this person did in this history textbook is highlight what this person thought was important. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but that is not annotating. All that is highlighting. Okay, so underlining and highlighting is not going to give you full credit for your homework in theology. Other teachers in other classes might tell you, hey, all I want you to do is highlight, or all I want you to do is underline. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what that teacher wants. That is not going to work for theology. Underlining and highlighting are just small portions of annotating. Okay, so yes, annotating can involve underlining and highlighting, and those are good things, but you must have notes in the margin in addition to highlighting and underlining. Otherwise, you will not get full credit. So if I look at your homework and it looks like the picture on the left or the picture on the right, you are not going to get full credit.